The Umbrella Revolution, sometimes used interchangeably with Umbrella Movement, was a series of sit-in street protests that occurred in Hong Kong from September 26 to December 15, 2014. The protests began after the Standing Committee of the National People's Congress, NPCSC, came to a decision regarding proposed reforms to the Hong Kong electoral system. The decision was widely seen to be highly restrictive, and tantamount to the Chinese Communist Party's pre-screening of the candidates for the Hong Kong chief executive election in 2017 before the candidates are presented to the Hong Kong electorate. Students led a strike against the NPCSC's decision beginning on September 22, 2014, and the Hong Kong Federation of Students and Scholarism started protesting outside the government headquarters on September 26, 2014. On September 28, the Occupy Central with Love and Peace movement announced that they would begin their civil disobedience campaign immediately. Demonstrations began outside the Hong Kong government headquarters, and members of what would eventually be called the Umbrella Movement occupied several major city intersections. Police tactics, including the use of tear gas, and attacks on protesters by opponents that included Triad members, triggered more citizens to join the protests, occupying Causeway Bay and Mong Kok. The number of protesters peaked at more than 100,000 at any given time, overwhelming the police, thus causing containment errors. Government officials in Hong Kong and in Beijing denounced the occupation as illegal and violation of the rule of law, and Chinese state media and officials claimed repeatedly that the West had played an instigating role in the protests, and warned of deaths and injuries and other grave consequences. Not only were there fistfights at occupation sites and flame wars on social media, family members found themselves on different sides of the conflict. Key areas in Admiralty, Causeway Bay, and Mong Kok were occupied and remained closed to traffic for 79 days. Despite numerous incidents of intimidation and violence by triads and thugs, particularly in Mong Kok, and several attempts at clearance by the police, suffragists held their ground for over 2 months. After the Mong Kok occupation site was cleared with some scuffles on November 25, Admiralty and Causeway Bay were cleared with no opposition on 11 and December 14 respectively. Throughout the protests, the Hong Kong government's use of the police and courts to resolve political issues led to accusations that these institutions had been turned into political tools, thereby compromising the police and judicial system in the territory and eroding the rule of law in favor of rule by law. Police inactions and violent actions throughout the occupation were widely perceived to have severely damaged the reputation of what was once recognized as the most efficient, honest, and impartial police forces in the Asia-Pacific region. The protests ended without any political concessions from the government, but instead triggered rhetoric from Chief Executive of Hong Kong Tsai Lung and mainland officials about rule of law and patriotism, and an assault on academic freedoms and civil liberties of activists.